Periodic functions, what does that even mean? Basically, a periodic function is one that repeats itself over and over in a horizontal direction. The period is the length of one repetitional cycle. First of all, does that remind you of anything, something that repeats itself over and over horizontally? Can you think of anything in real life? Ocean wave?
Heartbeat.
Or a heartbeat. That kind of thing. That's something that might repeat itself periodically. Does that make sense? Okay, beautiful. Now, I said the period is the length of one repetitional cycle. So girls, if you look at like this first point, for instance, when does that point happen again? About there. Does that make sense? So the horizontal length from there to there is one period. Does that make sense? In this example, the horizontal axis is months. So in this example, that point there corresponds to January. I think this point here corresponds to the next January. So what's one period? 1 year, or if we're talking about months, 12 months. So girls, in this example, one period is 12 months. Is everything okay so far? Beautiful. Okay, so first of all, 1A, I've skipped 1A. Is the following function periodic? Yes. Really simple. If you want to write a reason, it's because it repeats horizontally. B, what is the period P? Now, we've written it in words, but if you were to write a value for P, what would it be? Exactly. So I think for B, we should write P is 12. We've got a note here. If fx is a periodic function with period P, then f of x plus p equals f of x. In other words, it's like in this example here, x plus p would be like January, let's pretend it's like 2018. For instance, you don't have to copy this down, but my point is plus p, that becomes January 2019, right? Is everything okay? Plus 12 months in this example, just this example. So, now remember f of a function, like f of x or whatever, that's the y value, remember that? So, they're saying this y value of about, 28, do you think? 28, around there, is equal to, so that's f of x plus p, so that's equal to a year ago. So back p, about 28 there. That's what that's saying. So every p period has the same y value. Does that make sense? Because then that makes sense because it's repeating for every p. That's what I'm trying to say there. So, now girls, for the above function, find f of 3. We're just going straight maths. We're not even really worrying about the real life right now. What do you think f of 3 is? What value would you give that? 25-ish, yep. So there's 3. X is 3, or in this case, t, really. If I go across, yeah, I'd say about 25. I'd be happy with 25 or 26. Girls, just so you know, in IB marking with these kind of questions, they'll often say, except maybe 24 to 26. You know what I mean? They won't just say 25, and if you read it wrong, you're out. They'll give you a little bit of error. Okay? So in that case, what's f of 3 plus p? Oops, sorry. What must that be? It's still 25, but I'm gonna go back to what you were saying. Yes, you can write down just 25, but let me explain it. As you were saying, girls, 3 plus p, that's f of 3 plus 12, which would be f of 15. Does everyone agree with that line? Yeah. So if I go to 15 now and go up and go across, it looks like it's about 25 as well. It is what we thought, but using this rule, we could have just written, yes, it's 25, I already knew that, done. Is that making sense? I'm happy for you to go straight to the answer. It's just about function notation and understanding it. All right, cool, we're doing well. Now, A periodic function behaves as shown. So we got a minimum point. There's the minimum point. A maximum point. So we're oscillating between the minimum, maximum, like that. Does that make sense? Now, it's got an amplitude. Now, girls, first of all, we got this principal axis here. That goes through halfway through the minimum and maximum value. Now, can I explain something first of all? The minimum point is coordinates, right? An xy coordinate. It's a pair of coordinates, xy. But the minimum value, you might have done this in functions as well. What do I mean by the minimum value? Which coordinate? Y. So minimum, we're talking about how low we go, aren't we? The low. How low does it go? And the height is measured by y. So minimum value is just the y value of that minimum point. Does that make sense? Because it's how low. And height, low and height, is measured by y. Similarly for maximum. So girls, when I'm doing this max minus min, I'm actually talking about the maximum and minimum values. In other words, the y values. So if you want, you could say the maximum y minus the minimum y over 2. And the principal axis is the maximum y plus the minimum y over 2. Now let me explain these formulas first of all. Let's go back to our example, it'll help. What's the amplitude? Now girls, do you remember doing amplitude of a sine curve? Amplitude, as in the diagram, girls, amplitude is not the entire height of the function, so it doesn't go from top to bottom like that. Do you see? It only goes halfway from there to there. It's half of the distance between the top y value, maximum y value, and minimum y value. Half the distance. Is everyone with me? Now, how do I find that distance? That's the difference between the top y value and the bottom y value. So like if the top y value, say, was at 6, and the bottom y value was at 2, the entire distance from 2 to 6 is 4, but half of that is 2. So the amplitude would be 2. Now let me explain in the example above. Back here. Girls, what maximum y value does this graph hit? 29, 28? Shall we go with 28? Okay, so let's just write this down somewhere. Oh, sorry. So the maximum y value we've decided is 28 on this curve. What do you think the minimum y value is? Yeah, I'm happy with 15 or 16, either one. How are you doing so far, girls? All right, so girls, what's the vertical distance, between the maximum y value and the minimum y value, the whole one? 13 then, right. So girls, what I'm saying is this to about here is 13. Is everyone happy so far? Beautiful. But the amplitude is half of that. So girls, see how the amplitude is the maximum y value, 28, minus the minimum y value, 15, which does become 13, just like you guys told me. But I need to divide that by 2, so it's 13 on 2, or in other words, 6.5, to get an amplitude from about here to approximately there, approximately. That's the amplitude. From the top to halfway. or the bottom to halfway. This principal axis idea, it's basically the line that goes through the center. It's basically a horizontal line that goes through the middle. I'd say the middle is here. What do you think of this? Does that look about the center? Okay, now this isn't a perfect graph, so let's just guess. What y value do you think that line is going through? 20 or 21, somewhere there. All right, so the principal axis is, now, we've guessed it's y equals 21. I'm just going to write that down. Let's see if we were right. According to the formula, the principal axis, on that other page, is, can anyone tell me what it is using, it's on their page. So the max y plus the min y over 2, 28, what is it, 28 plus 15?
Which is 43.
Over 2, and what is it divided by 2?
21.5.
Okay, so our guess was pretty good. What's the equation of the principal axis then? Y equals 21.5, and we were very close with our guess, visually. Some better graphs, you'll probably be able to literally just read it like that. Rather than using the formula. But again, for really crazy high values, you might need a formula.